Welcome to our video. I'm Marshall Shannon with Ministry Design Concepts. Today's video is a SWOT analysis, and the emphasis that we're giving is making it work. The purpose of our webinar today is to show you how to convert your SWOT analysis into a blueprint for ministry transformation. If you want to transform your ministry through the use of a SWOT analysis, here are 5 areas that are common fail points with the way churches use their SWOT analysis. Well, I guess we probably should stop and define what a SWOT analysis is. Wikipedia has defined a SWOT analysis as a strategic planning method used to evaluate the following 4 things: your strengths and weaknesses, your opportunities and threats. So every church has those, both internally, your strengths and weaknesses, and externally, your opportunities and threats. Business Dictionary says that situation analysis in which internal strengths and weaknesses of a church and the external opportunities and threats faced by the church are closely examined so that you can chart a strategy, so you can develop a game plan for your ministry. Your dictionary says that a SWOT analysis is an analysis of a church's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Then Quantum 3 defines SWOT analysis as the evaluation of available information concerning the church's environment in order to identify internal strengths and weaknesses and external threats and opportunities. So your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats is an analytical tool where you can examine the interaction between your ministry and the proposed changes and the external community, that which is outside of your church. Let me just explain how this fits into the ministry design process. When you develop a strategic plan that's going to be used to transform your ministry so that you can fulfill your calling, you have a discovery, design, delivery, and direction phase of the process. When it comes to taking the SWOT analysis, which is a part of strategic planning, it's a management tool, it's a design tool. You've got to discover certain things. You need to understand and identify correctly your actual core values, your calling as a church, your mission, and God's vision, His preferred future of what He wants you to do and be, and where He wants you to go and who He wants you to reach, and what He sees for your ministry. That's God's vision for your ministry. And at the foundation of your strategic plan is your vision, your mission, and your core values. So you've got to discover the data and the performance and everything about your church, and then design that from that information and discovery phase, design your game plan, and then implement it, and then you've got to manage it to keep it working smoothly. You've got to maintain it. So what is the problem with the SWOT analysis process that churches are facing? Which, by the way, this information is not original with me. People have been writing about this for decades, since the 60s and 70s. And so as we look at this, we want you to understand that since Albert Humphrey in the 60s and 70s, he's the guy that was credited with the technique of the SWOT analysis process, that people have been trying to use it, and they commonly fail, and churches commonly fail. Matter of fact, in my coaching ministry, in helping churches with figuring out what's going on, doing a ministry audit, I'll use a SWOT analysis process. And people just don't understand, first off, what is going on with it. The purpose of this webinar is to be able to help you have a better understanding of the strategic purpose of a SWOT analysis and a different approach for you to use, a different process, so that you can move your ministry forward. Because A SWOT analysis is a management tool that can be a real, genuine driver for strategic planning and for operational planning. And so we want you to avoid the fail points that are so commonly experienced by churches in North America. And we want you to plan correctly so that you can be fruitful and not just faithful to carry out activities in your church, but for you to achieve God's calling for your ministry. The normal SWOT analysis practice, and just listen to me for a moment here with this. Your leadership team may gather for a half day or a full day, probably somewhere off-site. You'll take 4 easels with flip charts with you. You'll put a flip chart in every corner of the room. And as you're meeting in the room, you'll have the people you brought, which is probably your executive leadership team that may have been working together for some time. You divide them into 4 teams, and each team is going to brainstorm about ideas and issues, and they're going to assign to every SWOT category, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, their perception as to what those are for every category. Probably sounds familiar, doesn't it? You are probably wondering why this approach leads to strategic failure. Well, I'm going to share with you why I think it does and why I think it has in the past, and it will in the future if we don't adjust the way that we do our SWOT analysis in our churches. So here is how they're flawed, and I've selected 5, and I'm going to hold the last one until the end, but here are the first 4 that we're going to talk about. A lack of training and education about what is a solid SWOT analysis process, a lack of supporting information, data, a lack of key personnel to be involved, and a lack of proper planning. And so we're going to go through all 4 of these, and the 5th one at the end that I'll spring on you to help you understand how churches are failing to have an effective SWOT analysis that helps them design and build and develop and implement, carry out their strategic plan so they can see their ministries transformed and reaching more people with the gospel and making disciples that make disciples. So here's the first one. There is the failure that we don't really understand the fundamentals of SWOT analysis. There are strengths that we are to understand, and strengths describe the positive attributes, both tangible and intangible, that are internal to our organization. In other words, we have control of them. They are within our control. They are the things that we do well. They are the resources that we have that make us strong. These are the advantages that we have as a ministry. You may want to evaluate your strengths by areas such as your ministries, your manpower, your money. You may want to look at your place and procedures and processes. You may want to look at your people that you're trying to reach. You break it down into categories, so when you're looking at your strengths, you've looked at every category or component that is involved, both tangible and intangible, in your church. They are things that you control. You can get rid of the place. You can get rid of the process. You can get rid of the personnel. You can get rid of the processes and procedures and policies. They are things that you control. Secondly are weaknesses. Weaknesses are the things within your ministry that are factors you can control that distract your ability to achieve your mission. They're limiting you. You have faults or defects or broken processes or broken people or broken facilities that have weakened your effort, your ability to fulfill the Great Commission. Weaknesses capture the negative aspects that are internal to your ministry, and they distract you from the value that you offer, and they put you at a disadvantage. The areas that you need to improve, you need to make some kind of change. They are the areas where you are weak. They're areas you need to enhance so that you can more effectively fulfill your mission. The more accurately you identify your weaknesses, the more valuable the SWOT analysis will be to your assessment. So you need to look at your strengths and your weaknesses. The next one is your opportunities. These are the attractive factors, as the way achieveit.com put it, that represent the reason for your ministry to exist and prosper. These are the things that you can take advantage of in your community or around the world that you can accomplish in the Great Commission. They are your opportunities. These are external to your ministry. You may look, and you'll have to decide how you want to do this. You look at an opportunity to strengthen or repair or to improve a ministry inside of your church that you have control of. That really, you might put that under as a strength because you have control of it. But an opportunity is something you don't have control, and you want to take advantage of that opportunity to carry out the mission of your church to win souls and make disciples. Whatever that looks like for your ministry, that's an opportunity. It is external. It is something you don't control, and you want to realize greater impact for eternity by implementing a strategy to serve or reach or keep or build a group of people. And so opportunities may be the result of your area growing, demographics change, a cultural shift, the solving of a problem. Something has changed, or that you've identified an opportunity that you've not seen before, that your ministry now can move forward to be more effective in carrying out your calling as a church. Then there are threats. What factors are potential threats to your ministry and mission? Threats include factors beyond your control. Remember, opportunities and threats are beyond your control. Strengths and weaknesses are within your control. These threats may threaten your strategy to carry out the Great Commission. They may threaten one or all of your ministries. It may threaten your congregation. It's something that has put you at risk. It could be the changing demographics of your community that can threaten your ministry, and you must adapt and adjust to stay effective. For instance, I work with churches where the demographics have changed, and their church is of a former demographics that was dominant in their community, and now all of those people have moved away, and their community, where the location where the church is now a complete different set of people groups that you don't have any relationships with. It's different culture. You're not accepted by them. You don't seem to be able to adapt and adjust to reach them, and it's threatening the future because your church may be a generation or two from going, extinct, from going completely out of ministry. And so threats are things that are going to threaten you, and they may harm your ministry in some way. They may hinder your ministry in some way. They, in some way, don't help you, but are going to harm you. And you want to be able to identify them so that you can be proactive. So it could be something going on in your community, in the government. It could be in the culture. It could be in certain people groups. Something that is threatening you. Remember, if you say, well, what's threatening us is an aging facility. That would really be a weakness because it's something you can control because you can do something about it. But a threat may be something coming from the outside where you don't have authority over that, and you have to leverage your capital in order to cut off the threat or to stop the threat from damaging your ministry. And so a normal practice in SWOT analysis for churches is to use brainstorming without collecting the right research data first. And so the second big failure, first one is failure to fully understand what the SWOT analysis process really is and what it's intended to do. And the second one is to limit your SWOT analysis to the handful of people in the room doing the brainstorming with the flip charts, instead of collecting all the information, which should be quantitative and qualitative. Quantitative would be the metrics of measuring how your ministries are doing, how they are performing. And qualitative would be looking at the quality or value, how well you're doing ministry. Think for a moment Chevy, Buick, Cadillac. Chevy being the lowest of quality, Buick being the middle, and Cadillac being the top. When you look at how you're performing and carrying out your ministry, are you doing it the best you can? What quality is your ministries? And then quantitative would be the measurement, whether or not you're setting goals and reaching them, whether or not you're being not just faithful to carry out your activities in your ministries, but you're achieving what God has called you to achieve, and you're seeing people come to faith in Christ, and you're seeing them grow up into the fullness of the stature of Christ. So you're making disciples that make disciples. Where brainstorming fits into the process is that you do need to have everyone's perspective, and you want to get their opinion about what are the strengths of your ministry, what are the weaknesses of your ministry, what are the opportunities you have in your community and around the world, and what is threatening, potential threats to the future of your ministry. But you also want to collect types of data. And so you may look at your community and collect, through analysis, information about your community. And you want to look at it in three ways, at least. The demographics, that's who's married and who's not, what kind of job they've got, what their income is, how many people are in their family, do they own or rent their home, do they have one car or two. It's just the basic demographics of your community, their age groups, income, race, so forth. Then you want to look at their psychographics. This is how they think, their worldview, their belief system. Psycho, their thinking, their mental state. And then the third one I would recommend is eclographics. And you look at that in one particular way, is what people groups attend church, Bible-believing church, in your community, and what people groups do not. Who are the what Tom Rainer says, the U1s who are just waiting for an invitation to come to church, and who are the U5s who are antagonistic against Christ and against his church? And so you look at your community to get an idea of what people groups are the low-hanging fruit who already go to church, and who are certain churches reaching already and doing a good job of doing that. Because you don't want to just pull believers from another church to come to yours. Don't you want to reach the unchurched and the de-churched in your community? So you want to look at your community analysis, and at least you can buy from Percept Group or Mission Insight. You can buy the demographics, the psychographics, and perhaps the eclographics to understand the people in your community. You want to collect that data and digest it so that you can use it for your diagnosing of what you're to do in your strategy to fulfill your calling as a church. Then you look at your operation. How are you operating? Not just being faithful every week to go through the motions of every ministry, project, program, activity, event in your church, but what is that yielding? What is your operational processes yielding? Where are they weak? Where are the fail points? Where are they strong? It's one thing to be faithful. It's another thing to say, Lord, make us fruitful. And you have control of your structure of your ministry. How's it operating? Then your money. Then your performance. How well are you doing? Then you get feedback. You get feedback from your personnel and from people, both inside and outside of your church. And what you're trying to do is measure your performance as a church and look at every aspect so you bring the data to back up where you are. It will help you determine whether the subjective brainstorming is really compliant with, in alignment with, congruent with the information you've collected about yourself. Because executive teams have a tendency to all think that they're doing fine. are to see things from the same perspective, which leads us to the third one. But first, let me just give you some brainstorming questions. And this is just a bonus to this lecture today. Strengths. What are some questions you should be asking? What are your performance advantages? What do you do well? You need to answer that. What unique resources do you have? What do other people see as your strengths? What are your assets? What makes you different from other churches? How does your personnel create ministry opportunities? How does your target groups enhance your ability to succeed at fulfilling the Great Commission? What particular ministry expertise do you have? Just think of all the ways that you would evaluate and assess the strengths of your ministry, from the people to the place, to your procedures, to your processes, to your policies, to your personnel, to the people groups you've been called to reach, and on you go. What makes you strong? What are you doing really well? What is good about your church, your congregation? Then your weaknesses. What could you improve? What do you do badly? What should you avoid doing altogether? What necessary expertise or manpower do you currently lack as you look at your ministry and you'd say, you know, we're really weak here. If we only had blank, it would really propel us forward with reaching the unchurched or dechurched in our community to make disciples that make disciples. In what areas do your competitors have an edge? Now, let me stop here for a moment and just talk to you about what you define as your competition in the community. Over the last decades, it's become pretty clear, to me anyway, that pastors find themselves in competition, they think, with other churches in their community, and this has been fostered by our getting together in our groups, our associations or denominations, our networking, and we're sitting and eating lunch together or at some conference or monthly meeting, and the guy next to us, who may be across the street or across the town, says, well, how many are you running? And you pad your answer and give him the best day you had on Easter Sunday as to how many you're running. And immediately he may ask, well, how many did you baptize last month? On and on it goes, and you're thinking, well, my competition is the church across the street or across town. And I want to tell you, no, it's not. Your competition are the people or the things in your community that are competing with you for the souls of men, for the souls of women, for the souls of children or young people or the elderly, for people who are unchurched. And you are competing with the culture and your community and all the complexities and all the competition for their interest and focus. You are competing for men's souls. And that's how I think we ought to look at it. And we want every church to win souls and make disciples. Every Bible-believing church, we ought to want them to reach as many people as they can and to carry out God's calling, to fulfill God's mission, and to reach God's vision for their ministry. So it's not the church that's our competition. It's Satan and sin and the system that we live in and any other S you can think of that is competing for the souls of men. And so we take the side of Christ and we're allowed to partner with him to win souls and make disciples. Does your target groups that you're called to reach erode your efforts to fulfill the Great Commission? Are they helping you or hindering you? Let me talk to you next. Here's some questions to ask to help you identify opportunities you have in your community and around the globe to fulfill your calling as a church. Where are the good opportunities facing you? Are there trends emerging you can profitably service? What external changes present interesting opportunities for you? Is there talent located elsewhere you might be able to acquire that's going to help you fulfill your mission as a church? Is another ministry failing to adequately service the market and you need and can step in and say, you know, there's 100,000 people, but only one church that is doing blank to minister to these people, to reach them with the gospel. We can step in. Or maybe their inadequacy is not a lack of of performance. It's a lack of being able to cover everything, size. Whatever the inadequacy is, that you see an opportunity for you to win souls and make disciples. Is there an unmet need or want you can fulfill? Could you package your ministries differently to more effectively carry out your mission? Then let's move to the last one, some brainstorming questions, the threats. What obstacles do you face? What is your community doing? Is changing technology threatening you? Is there a better equipped competitor in your market? Again, back to who your competition is. The church ought to do things the best it can be done. And yes, I think you ought to utilize every technology and opportunity and event and tool that is available to you that fits within God's plan for your ministry, that you utilize that for the honor and glory of God and to effectively fulfill the Great Commission. And so as you look at the things that are competing for the souls of men, who's better equipped than you to win those men to Christ? Is there an entity who may not be a competitor today that could possibly become one tomorrow? What are the trends you see coming that's going to really suck people away from the gospel, from Christ, from being faithful to Him, from hearing the claims of Christ on their life? And could your key staff be tempted to leave your ministry? And so you look at the threats where, if we lose so-and-so, it's really going to damage us because of their skill set and their talent base. So the threats, and here's some more questions. Is your location or facility a hindrance? Is your campus a safe place? Is there anything or anyone that could restrict or deflate your ministry momentum and threaten the future of your ministry to continue growing to the next level to win souls and make disciples? What if there is a natural disaster or your website is hacked and people's private information is stolen as they've used the online donation feature on your website? Or you've got other data about them on your website that's in your cloud or on your system, and they hack it. What if you are sued? You've got all these threats that are coming that you can answer about it. Now, here's the third one. Churches fail when they go to do a SWOT analysis. They fail to get different perspectives. And what I mean by this is they get only the pastoral staff. They get only the pastoral staff. They don't maybe get the administrative staff or support staff or the operational staff or all of their leadership team or ministry directors or ministry volunteers. And they only get the group that maybe is the executive leadership team, which may be the pastor, the executive pastor, a couple associates, an assistant pastor, or someone who is heading up their multi-site ministry, the campus pastor, and they kind of all have the same perspective. And you go into this and you're missing the perspective of other key stakeholders who are there. And I would tell you to even consider getting outsiders who are familiar with your ministry and familiar with your context. You want to get different perspectives because failure to do so leaves the same perspective being the only perspective that observes and evaluates and assesses your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And this is a key problem and a fail point in the way that churches have been able to effectively perform their SWOT analysis. So we want to translate the process into strategy. This is the fourth one, where you're going to turn the SWOT process into a strategic ministry plan that you're going to be able to effectively carry out God's calling to your church. So all too often, we don't take the SWOT analysis and carry through with it. And it is a chronic problem that I find as a ministry coach, that the churches I do a ministry SWOT analysis, they become paralyzed for some reason and don't carry it forth into a strategic planning process. So, does your SWOT analysis drive your strategy? It's supposed to. It's supposed to. And the SWOT potential is that the SWOT presents the opportunity to become the framework for your strategy and your operational plans. So your strategic and operational plans are framed up by the information and analysis you've taken through doing a simple SWOT process. So the potential of this is this fourth step can transform your ministry into a strategic plan as a development tool that will power and focus your ministry to be fruitful in carrying out the Great Commission. The potential of the SWOT process is it is potent, it is powerful. It can drive your strategy. It can develop it and make it strong and accurate so that your strategy is right on line. For years, I coached our sons with baseball and soccer, and even for a couple of years with basketball when they were in high school. And in doing that, if we didn't have the right strategy for the right opponent that took into account the SWOT analysis of our team and of our opponent and where we were playing and even who was reffing and what the stands are going to be filled with, all those things, we came up with the wrong strategy. Often we got beat because I did a poor job as a coach. The potential of a SWOT analysis that is done correctly is a powerful strategy, a powerful ministry game plan to propel your ministry forward. So give clear thought to it. Now let's talk about the purpose of a SWOT. The purpose is to benefit you in helping your strategic plan in the following ways. Number one, it is to serve as a source of information for your strategic planning. It should build your church's strengths. It should reverse or remove your weaknesses. It should maximize your response to the opportunities. It should help you overcome the threats to your church. It should help you identify the core competencies of your ministry. It should help in setting your objectives for strategic planning. It should help you in knowing your past, present, and future by using past and current data, research information, and your future plans. You can chalk those out. You can strategize them out. You can put them into a plan. The strategic SWOT analysis provides information that helps in synchronizing all of the church's resources and your capabilities with your environment, your competitive environment, competing for the souls of men, and it helps you to operate in a fruitful way, not just in a faithful way of carrying out the routine activities of your church. Yes, we had Sunday school, we had small groups, we had worship, we had our men's Bible study Saturday morning and our youth night Sunday night. We had and so forth and fill the blank. And so let's move from that to your performance. The SWOT is to help you perform God's calling on your church. And so you want to be able to perform in a way that honors God and then partnering with Him to make an impact for eternity in the lives of everyone God has for you to do so. So here is the fifth fail point, and I haven't mentioned this till now, and that is the failure of churches to implement the strategy. They have the SWOT, they use the SWOT to drive their strategic planning, and they get to the strategic planning and they don't implement it. So the mechanics of the strategic plan, it is that your operational plan, and you put together the written operational plan of your ministry, and you know this is who's going to do what and when and how, and they're going to have this work done by this time, and they're supposed to be accomplishing the following things. I did a 40-minute webinar recently on the 3 rules of strategic planning, and went through what the 3 key rules for a successful operational plan are, and if you're going to carry out your planning, your game plan, what you have to do, it's a part of the operational plan. But along with implementing the strategy, fully having an operational plan that shows how you're going to carry out your strategic plan, who is going to do what, how they're going to do it, where they're going to do it, when they're going to do it, why they're going to do it. So the W's and the H, you're answering that about every one of those. So everybody knows who is responsible for what and who is going to perform what and when and where and how and why and so forth. Then you're going to monitor. By monitor, I mean that you are going to measure the ministries that you have set up. And in your implementation, when you fail to implement it, you've got to have an operational plan that shows you how to carry out your strategic plan. And that's the mechanics. But then if you don't implement it, so you're monitoring what's happening and measuring the results so that you can do the third thing, and that's modify it to make adjustments and adapt and adjust to your performance. So you find a weakness in your strategy and maybe a weakness in your operational plan, your action steps, and you have to adapt and adjust those and modify those steps so that you can succeed. It's live on the spot, live on the moment, where you make modifications to your game plan. And you don't want to lose momentum. A good percentage of churches, and I don't know what it is, may do SWOT analysis and follow up with that information to develop a strategic plan, and follow up with that strategic plan to break it down into operational action plans, and take that operational plan and actually implement it, and then monitor it so that they can continually keep up with what's happening so they gain momentum instead of losing momentum. And they manage the process to go through the monitoring, measuring, modifying to manage their momentum, because souls are at stake. And so as you go through this, and let me close with the following information, you've got to implement that notebook of information that you have put together so that you can carry out your work. You've got to carry through with it, or you've wasted everyone's time just talking about the SWOT analysis, the strategic planning, the operational game plan you put together with the action steps and all your personnel, and you fail to implement it, you're going to fail. So what do you do with your SWOT analysis? Well, first, you need to maintain and build up and leverage the strengths you have. You need to remedy, change, or stop your weaknesses, eliminate them. You need to prioritize and capture and build on and optimize your opportunities. And you need to counter or minimize or manage the threats that are coming against your ministry. There are 5 key weaknesses that come about that are connected in the SWOT analysis process that you don't implement it to carry out, to do a strategic plan. You don't get the right people involved. You don't understand what you're doing. You don't gather the right research, and you fail to do what you ought to do in order to move your ministry forward. I trust that this has been helpful to you and that you'll look at these 5 areas and evaluate where you're doing it well, your SWOT analysis, and where you're not doing it well. Well, I'm Marshall Shannon, your ministry design coach with Ministry Design Training and Concepts. You can reach me at this email address or either one of these phone numbers, and we'll be happy to talk with you. Lord bless you.